everybody, Aaron Callan, Sage Dynamics.
And John Dufresne with Sage Dynamics.
And in this week's video, we're going to talk about John. So for those of you that may not have heard, I brought John on board with Sage Dynamics to be another one of the instructors. So you may attend a Sage Dynamics class in the future, especially down in Florida, where John is going to be your instructor. The reason I brought John on board, because John was a repeat student of mine. He's a Sage alumni. And I always had the plan of expanding, not in a crazy way. I don't want to put 20, 30, 40 different instructors out in the field. I want a core group of guys who are as reality focused as I am when it comes to instruction, but have the ability to add their own experience to the program, because I don't want my instructors to be dogmatic. And John was the first instructor I identified like that. And I liked the idea of pulling an instructor out of my alumni as opposed to just taking resumes and doing job interviews and things like that. So I wanted to make this video to introduce John to you, for those of you who may not know him, may not know his background, and you may see him as an instructor in a future class. And I definitely want prospective students as well as returning alumni to have confidence in John's ability to teach the Sage program, but also add his own wealth of experience to the class. So the best way to introduce you guys to John first, people love to hear about guys' backgrounds, where they come from, where they got their experiences, because experience is an important thing, especially when it comes to teaching people self-defense focused shooting. So John, tell us a little bit about your background.
So a little bit about me. I grew up in South Florida, went into the Army, and went straight through with a Ranger contract into 3rd Ranger Battalion. I did my time there in various ways, and I really enjoyed it, with 4 deployments overseas. And after 5 years, I got out. As I was getting out, I got hired by Gavin Becker and Associates, and I went out to California and started working for them to do executive protection. A little bit of executive protection stuff with them. Really enjoyed it. It was cool, but celebrities aren't my thing. So throughout that entire time, I had been training myself and others at Gavin Becker as well, and doing some shooting, and also working with Frank Proctor from Way of the Gun. Frank's a really good guy, I love him, and I really had a great time learning from him. That entire time as well, I continued competitive shooting, but also keeping a defensive mindset with all of it. After leaving Gavin Becker and coming back home due to a little bit of family stuff, I got back into the security world, working for a different company, and pretty much enjoyed that for a little bit, but wanted to train more. So I got really hardcore into training. Did a lot of stuff, a lot more stuff with Frank, and traveled around, met a few other instructors, Craig Douglas, and did some combative stuff with him, and actually got into teaching with and consulting for some police departments locally to me. They really enjoyed it. Once they actually got night vision, they got really involved in getting me around, and it was a good experience having that. And obviously I met Aaron, and from there I started training with him, and couldn't like it any more than that. It was great. And now here we are.
So for those of you that just follow the YouTube channel, or maybe this is your first time watching a Sage video, in that case, welcome. I have a philosophy that doesn't really have a clear delineation, except for me saying everything needs to be as reality focused as possible. That's the philosophy of Sage Dynamics. Is there's a lot of cool stuff we can do, me as an instructor, that I can have guys do in classes, and there's a lot of cool classes you can take, but the context needs to be one for your lifestyle and your profession first, and then entertainment second. That's kind of how I feel about it. So when I met John, the first class he went to, I just identified that his ease of being able to transition his very, very strong military background, but still be able to take those same lessons he learned in the Ranger Battalion and the same lessons he learned in executive protection, and apply those to somebody who doesn't have a background in that and who that's not their profession. So he was able to, just when interacting with other students and interacting with other people in the class, be able to take those lessons and shape them and mold them to teach someone who they're a dentist, or maybe they're a doctor, or maybe they're a general contractor. And that's one of the most important things when it comes to context, and that's a word that we're never going to beat to death, is be able to take those lessons and shape them and mold them for the student's lifestyle. Because There's a lot of great things that you can teach somebody from the Ranger Town experience that we got there, like team-based and CQB and breaching charges and all this other stuff. But how do we take that information, that life experience, and kind of codify it for someone who's not really ever going to be doing those things? And that's one thing that immediately identified that, John's definitely on point. He's able to shape those lessons. What would you say is your philosophy approaching teaching, not just law enforcement, not just military, but I mean a student in general?
Well, everybody to me is a student, whether they're law enforcement, whether they're military, whether they're, like you said, a dentist. I think everybody has, as long as they have the mindset that they want to defend themselves, defend others, and generally protect the world from the evil that there is, I'm down to help them. And there's always something they can learn from anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's a novice shooter, you can learn something from them. You can learn, it's having an open mind is what I've always set myself on, and having a sponge-like, mind when it comes to collecting information. So I take this, I take that, and then I bring out the things that I deem to myself that I don't like or that wouldn't fit what I want, and then continue on with that wet sponge of what I do have and continue using for further information and teaching.
And that's something I've always appreciated from the instructors that I take classes from. And if I see an instructor, one of my peers, and he's not continuing to educate himself, I always have to kind of like in the back of my head wonder why. You were an instructor before we ever met, yet you're still taking classes. You came and took a class from me, even though some people might see your background and go, well, he's a Ranger, who does he need to take classes from? And that's the wrong mentality to have. You're a forever student. There's no royal road to perfection, so you can't take shortcuts and just assume that just because you have this experience that you no longer need to educate yourself. And I think that one of the most impressive things about that is the fact that, like, hey, I'm in this class. Like, even though it was technically an entry-level rifle class, I think that was the first class I took was rifle or pistol. Even though it was an entry-level rifle class, John's here. And I'd like to think that you learned a few things throughout the class, because some knowledge is institutionalized and it doesn't get outside of that institution, so you may have to go somewhere else to learn new things or learn a different way to do something that maybe just a different technique for an application solving a problem. And I want people to be problem solvers first. I love students that come to me who can already shoot, and I love helping students shoot better. But what's most impressive to me is when I'm able to give someone a technique or a skill, and they use that skill in a classroom setting during a scenario to solve a problem in real time that they never confronted in their life, and they do it seamlessly because they recognize problem, here's my tool set, this is the tool I need, solution solve.
Exactly.
So as I kind of already touched on, my biggest thing in bringing John on board was to make sure that he was teaching the SAGE program, but with enough leeway to keep it from becoming dogmatic. There are many ways to approach a technique. Most techniques, almost all techniques, there's multiple ways to get the task accomplished, and some of those techniques vary based on what the problem is that you're facing. So with John, I wanted to make sure that he's able to apply his own experiences and his own backgrounds to the program. You've been through multiple SAGE classes as a student, and you've also helped me teach classes since then. What is your philosophy going forward? What are you going to do to make it your own while still maintaining that reality-focused training that SAGE is known for?
For me, it would be to bring, like you said, having that reality, but also bringing all those efficiencies that people can bring into shooting, and the mindset that they can solve things with, and just mush that all into one big ball, so that they can go home with something to think about, practice, train on in the future, and even having some kind of, a lot of people separate that competition defensive stuff, and I know we've talked about that.
I was going to bring that up,
And I actually enjoyed both, and I like sticking them together and taking the best out of both of them and blending them. And if you did come to a class where I'm at, you're going to see that. You're going to see some little things that would be, some people would say it's competition, where you can use them in defensive situations.
Absolutely. So we wanted to put this video out there, especially with John, about to start running classes here in Florida to start, and then he's going to branch out from there. And then you may attend a SAGE class where both of us are teaching together. But I wanted potential students, future students, to feel comfortable with John. And of course, he's going to put his own brand on things, and I highly encourage that. I want him to be his own person, teach his own classes, and do things with the Sage overall philosophy, but applying his own techniques and his own methodology to the way that he's going to teach things. That way, if you attend 2 different Sage classes, one with John or another one of the Sage instructors that's coming up, or myself, you're getting the same overall class with a different methodology and a different approach to the points of education. So for those of you getting ready to attend Sage class, especially here in Florida, you're probably going to see John. You'll see me again in the future. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics.
I'm John Dufresne with Sage Dynamics.
Train accordingly.